welcome everybody to this live broadcast today. We're broadcasting from StreamYard. My name is Ray Chabanian. I am the originator or founder, if you will, of Ray's Recovery, the global online addiction support community. And I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes and go over kind of the format and layout of this and what you can expect from this. Basically, I'm going to take about 15 minutes and tell you guys a little bit about my story, like how it used to be in addiction, in active addiction for me. And then we're going to have our co-host, Dan, come on and share about 15 minutes of his past experiences during active addiction. Now, I'd also like to say, because it's very important for the stories, that me and Dan grew up together and we used together for probably over a decade, I'd say. And we experienced a lot of things together. Towards the end-ish, we kind of went our separate ways. And then we reunited and came back together. And it's really cool because we were like really bad and deep into addiction. And now we're both doing really well and helping other people in their addiction recovery. So it's a really special event for me, at least, I would say, and hopefully for Dan as well, because it's just really cool to see that from where we came, we're here and now both on a mission to help others. So 15 minutes for me, 15 minutes for Dan. Then we're going to share for about 15 minutes on like how we got clean and where we're at now today. And then we're going to open it up for questions for the last 30 minutes or so. And if there's no one that has any questions or comments, me and Dan are going to continue to share about the solutions that we still practice today that help us to stay clean and sober. So I'm going to bring Dan on so everybody can see, and but I'll start with some of my stories. So hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hey, man. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, no problem.
So, okay, I'm going to start with, just some of the major highlights of my story and what brought me here to this point today. So, it's hard to fit it all in into 15 minutes, but there's so much, there's like so much stuff. But I'll give you some of the highlights, some of the major things that happened, some of the things I experienced. So, let's see here. Let me start so I don't go over. Okay, so I had a pretty good childhood. Up until I was about 12 years old, I thought things were going well in my life. And just as a kid, I was happy and I listened to my parents. I was pretty good. But when I was 12, my parents separated. And it was like a very vital time in my life. And so that separation caused, it was like the rug was ripped out from underneath of me, and I didn't understand, and I had all these emotions that I didn't know what to do with. And I just so happened to be hanging around people in school like Dan and some other people who were into drugs at that time to some degree. And actually, me and Dan have experienced, well, I've experienced a lot of firsts with Dan. Like my first cigarette was with Dan, my first, joint, my first shot of heroin, ecstasy. I mean, a lot of stuff was first. And we don't want to focus on like how much we used, really too much, but it was beyond excessive. So I was off to the races at 12 years old, honestly. And when I was 13, I was introduced to heroin my first time. And somewhere around 14, like somewhere in that year from 14 to 15, I started using needles. And we're going to be very real and raw with you because like there's a lot of things. And actually, Dan, I remember I was too scared to use a needle my first time, and Danny was already using that and shot me up my first time. And by the time I was 15, I was like a full-blown junkie, ripping and running and robbing and stealing and doing all that dirty stuff. And that continued for several years. I actually had my own apartment when I was 18, and at the age of 19, me and Dan actually went with another old friend of ours to get some dope, get some heroin. And we came back to my apartment, and Dan went first. And it was some extremely powerful heroin that we had gotten a hold of. Dan pretty much immediately overdosed and fell to the floor. And I revived him. I gave him CPR. And then I went because I thought, wow, this is some really strong stuff, you know? And so I went, and immediately I knew this was like the most intense feeling I'd ever felt, to the point where I didn't know how to handle myself. And for whatever reason, I was just like kind of freaking out. And I went over to my couch. I kneeled down and put my head on the couch, and then I stood up, and that was the last thing I remember. I don't know. I didn't know what to do. I was so like overwhelmed with the sensation coursing through my body. And that was it. And I believe Danny and this other guy that we were with at that time ran. I'm pretty sure they both ran and just left me there. And so there was a guy that lived downstairs. I was in this like apartment building, like a low income apartment building, and he would come up and just come in, you know. It was kind of like a brotherhood sort of. And when he came in, he see me laying there like blue, like pretty much as blue as my shirt is. And he had called 911. And there was another woman who lived in the building who we knew that was a nurse or used to be a nurse. And so he had her come up. And make a long story short, I was dead for 16 and a half minutes. When the medics came, they gave me multiple shots of Narcan, and hit me with a defibrillator, and they said, we're calling it. And this guy that came into my apartment and found me, by the grace of God, he said, there's got to be something else you can do. There's got to be something. Just please try something. So they said, well, normally we don't, but okay. And they hit me right in the heart with a needle full of epinephrine or adrenaline. You can call it either one. And I slowly opened my eyes. But during that time I was out, I had my first near-death experience where I believe it was the voice of God that was talking to me. And I felt, I think this is a really important part, I felt all the pain of not only my own like sins and you know, wrongdoings, but I felt all the pain of all the people who would ever mourn over me all at once. And somehow I just innately knew that's what it was. And I felt that for a little bit, and then it just all slipped away. And I heard this voice say, it's okay. Like this firm, strong man's voice say, it's okay. Everything is going to be okay. And then I had this overwhelming, it was like the exact opposite, this overwhelming joy and peace that came over me. And it was like I quit mourning my own death in that moment. And then shortly after that, I had opened up my eyes. And it was a lot. I don't know how I lived through that, but I did. And so that was at 19. So I said, okay, I've kind of taken this too far. I'm going to quit. You know, I got to stop. And I had a really bad, like I was using a lot at that time. So I locked myself in my apartment for 3 weeks, turned off my phone, shut the blinds, and just went through this living nightmare of withdrawal. And I remember about 2 weeks in, like I didn't sleep a wink. I was just laying in the fetal position. And 2 weeks in, I finally was able to move. And I remember crawling to the bathroom and like shaking and tremors and reaching up and turn on the faucet to get my hand wet. Cause like I didn't have any water, food, anything for like weeks. And I put a drop of water on my tongue, and just that one drop of water on my tongue made me so sick I started puking up my stomach lining, actually, because I had nothing else in me. So here I am, just going through this, and somehow I got through it. And that was at 19 years old. And it was almost 3 months to the day later, I had this freak accident. And I was going fishing with some friends. Dan wasn't there for this one, but I had like a cooler and fishing poles, and we had to walk down this rocky river bank, very close to where I grew up. And I tripped right at the very top on a stone, and it sent me flying, and I fell about 40 feet head first, landed on a boulder, and it split my head wide open, and another sharp edge of a rock or boulder cut my side about a foot long, about that long, and about 7 inches wide. And I remember I didn't realize that at the time that it had split me open, and it just hurt really bad. And I remember, like, I don't remember going unconscious or anything. I may have for a second, I don't know, but I lifted up my shirt and looked down, and I could see my insides, like my organs, and I thought, man, how am I alive and experiencing this? And make a long story short on that, because I want to be good with time here. I lost 90% of the blood in my body. They had to put me on a boat and take me to a parking lot where they can get me on a helicopter and life flight me. And I had to be, I remember the next thing in my awareness, I had another near death experience where it was like every scene of my life was on these slideshows, and they were all animated, and it was very vibrant and glowing. And I just remember wanting to go to sleep, and the medic on the plane was screaming at me, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open. But all I heard was a faint whisper of that. And I've had some revelations on that recently, which I won't get into right now. But the whole keep your eyes open thing, I think, is deeper than just what that moment was. But I remember the next thing was sitting in a wheelchair in an operating room with a surgeon in front of me, and it took 4.5 hours for them to do the surgery and put my head and stuff back together. 314 stitches and 72 staples. I had amnesia, but it was temporary amnesia. I had internal bleeding. I was urinating blood for like 2 months. And mind you, I thought, man, what a plot twist, because this was, I had just stopped, using drugs. And I thought, man, it wasn't an overdose. This is how you die, some freak accident. And it was just really, like, ironic. And so anyway, fast forward, I got through that. That was very tough. They said I'd be tube fed by the age of 35 and wouldn't remember my mother's name and maybe not my own name, and it would get worse every year. And I just said, okay. I never really bought the idea. I didn't agree or disagree. I just was neutral. And so I never bought into that diagnosis of it's just going to get worse and worse. And it's actually gotten better and better over the years, but I've had to work at it, my memory, my, functioning and things like that. So I stayed clean for a while. I went through a technical school. I was living in a house. I got into bodybuilding. I lost a bunch of weight and got really toned. And then I got married. And during that marriage, things started to go south, and I started doing oxys again, OxyContins, and that got expensive very quick. And so I went, eventually it led me back to heroin, but it was like I was presented with an opportunity, just randomly. And I was at a car wash and I needed change. And there was a guy in the stall next to me washing his car, and I went over to him. He had his back to me, and and I asked him if he had change. When he turns around, it was this guy I knew from high school. He was younger than me, and he's like, "Oh, I know who you are. You're into heroin." And I'm like, "No, man, I've been clean for a while. I don't do that anymore." And he opens up his hand, and he has these stamp bags, and he's like, "Well, I got some good stuff right here." And I'm like, "No." So he gives me my change. I'm over there washing my car, and it was literally like I could hear and feel something in my brain just engage. And I thought, well, I can do just one. And this is a really important part, because I think a lot of people think, well, I can do just one. I've been clean for a period of time. Life is good. It's better. And I can do just one. And for me, that just wasn't the case. Like I couldn't do just one. And besides, I bought like several of them off of him anyway, because it's like, well, I just got paid. I had a pocket full of cash. Get a deal on some. You don't just buy one, was like my train of thought. And then me and Danny kind of reconnected, and it went from me sniffing a couple to us shooting up again together, like every day. And pretty much like we spent the majority of our time together doing whatever we could to get more drugs. And that was what our life was centered around, was how do we get more and not go to jail in the process, So yeah, we did that, and then I don't really remember what happened, but some point during that we split ways. Dan probably has a better memory than me, but we split ways, and I had been in some like bad relationships with other women off and on, and I ended up homeless. So let's say it was maybe 22 when I relapsed, or 24, I think, closer to 24. And for the next 5, 6 years, it was just down the tubes, down the gutter. Jail, went to rehab multiple times, been in psych wards, tried to kill myself. I came back. I tried to overdose with like over $200 worth of heroin, and I came back out of it like hours later, and very ungrateful, very upset, and I just thought that I suck so bad at life I can't even successfully kill myself. And it was just like that was a rock bottom for me. It was one of several. So I just kind of like went on with life, and then I got very sick. My liver was shutting down on me, and I didn't know why. So I got hospitalized. It was because I was injecting so many different drugs into my veins every day, and yeah, so I had all these things going on. All like I had hepatitis C from sharing, and once I got clean again, my body miraculously fought it off. Like I've had all these chances, and like second, third, fourth, fifth chances at life through all this horrible stuff. And I mean, not to like glorify the using, but it was just doing so much. It was just such a crazy amount of drugs and substances I was just pumping into me. And again, it was because I didn't know how to deal with the things, the feelings, and they were repressed. And so that was how I dealt with it. It was an attempt to solve a problem, was using in the best way I could figure out in the moment. And so I finally, and again, this is very abbreviated, but I have about a minute left. Now we're going to hear from Danny. But I was so messed up that I wasn't even convinced that I needed help. But I reached out for help again. I think it was like my fourth rehab. And for me, fortunately, it only took four. But, you know, I just went and I did it. And they said, you got to stay long term. So I stayed 3C for 90 days. Then they said you should go to a halfway house, and so I went to a halfway house. I went to a three-quarter house, and I've stayed clean ever since. And this November 25th will be 9 years since I checked into that rehab. So that kind of led me to doing some groups because people would help me, and I learned a lot. And then I started to study other things outside of recovery, and I started to connect more pieces and see how things fit together. And I thought, man, if I could help some other people fill in some of the blanks along the way, that the blanks that I had that I didn't really understand or have answers for, maybe I could help them expedite their recovery process and speed it up. And so that led me to starting an in-person group, which is Christian based. And the nice thing about this, I think you could say, is there's kind of a dichotomy here of Dan's beliefs and my beliefs. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And that's very important because, sure, I'd love people to discover God, but it proves that even if you aren't a believer, you can still get clean, and not have to live in that horror, of active addiction. So that's like my time right now. I want to give it over to Dan because we definitely want to have some time for questions if anyone has any. So let's see. And to answer you, Beth, real quick, yeah, it's being streamed on Facebook right now, so we can pull it from there. But yeah, that's all for me. So for now, I want to give it over to Danny and hear a little bit about his story and what it was like for him. So go ahead, Dan.
All right, let me just go ahead and set my timer so I don't go over my 15
Sure.
minutes.
Sure.
As Ray said, we've been lifelong friends pretty much from high school. I always considered Ray a very close friend of mine. I had a very good upbringing. I had a very good childhood, never had any issues or problems growing up. The people I surrounded myself with at a very young age were using drugs and alcohol. They were a couple years older than me. So there was really no particular reason I started. It was just more or less to fit in with them and to experiment with it. And it progressed. I started using it at the age of 12, and it progressed very quickly from weed to acid to ecstasy to a whole bunch of other drugs, and then to heroin at a very, very young age, as Ray said, about 15 years old. Ray and I have had a lot of experiences together that I'm surprised we're both even still here right now. We would take very, very large quantities of drugs that, like I said, I don't know why we're still even here for that. I, unlike Ray, have never had any until I found the place I found out where I'm at now. I had never had any substantial clean time unless I was in a rehab. Um, but whenever I got on heroin, it took me to places that are you like someone who isn't on that couldn't even imagine. Um, I would steal, rob, do anything I possibly could for it. I got prescribed benzodiazepines at a young age, and that was thrown into the mix. Um, but ultimately it led me to being homeless. I went to rehab 27 different times, and uh, I was never able to get it successfully until the last one. I would go to rehab for 3 months, 6 months, 30 days, 28 days, the whole like end of the spectrum, and relapse within tops 2 days. I never had a substantial amount of clean time ever. It was always like my mind was always like you're just like go 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 go. And um, whenever you're feeling the withdrawals of heroin and the symptoms of it, you'll do just about anything it takes to make that go away. But ultimately, my parents had enough of my addiction because it was taking a toll on them. So they sent me to York, Pennsylvania, which is near Baltimore, to a recovery house, which I immediately got kicked out of for using. And I continued to use. I remained homeless for almost a year, doing things to obtain my drugs, stealing from people, selling myself to other men to get money. As uncomfortable that was at the time, I'm not ashamed of that anymore. It's just something that whenever you are in active addiction, you will do whatever it takes. I've overdosed plenty of times on heroin, never to the degree that Ray has, or never come close to death with any of that as much as Ray has. But it's amazing at how quickly something can destroy something so simple can destroy something so drastically. I did have one relapse after 9 years clean, and whenever I was clean for 9 years, I was like, I had that mindset of maybe I could just have a drink with my friends because 9 years go by and it's like, that still can't be there after this long. I've learned to live without it for so long. And I had one drink, and the next morning I woke up and it was just like autopilot. My phone went to Uber to East Liberty, bought 3 bundles of heroin, and within 3 or 4 days, it was like right back to square one of where everything that I put 9 years into was gone in the snap of a finger. And I think that's very important that people don't you can't that never goes away. You have to abstain from everything. I myself don't take any medications. I don't take anything that would jeopardize that, because I know that once you put one in you, it like something in you changes. But I've been to rehab 27 different times. They were all 12-step based, which me as an atheist, I've always been an atheist. I still consider myself an atheist. And I know that's, as Ray said, this is an interesting topic because a lot of people only know of the 12-step program. And that never worked for me because I've had people tell me to, if you don't find a higher power, then you're doomed. And I really tried, but just the way that my mind works and the way that like the logic in my thinking is, I can't do this. Like I would try and it would just I would fail. I would fail. So I was very, very, very hopeless and very, very hopeless and continued to use drugs. I was in jail one time for I took an excessive amount of benzodiazepines and blacked out and just barged into my doctor's office, stole his prescription pad while he was there. He just saw me do it, and I ran to CVS and walked up to the counter and just started writing my own prescriptions and ended up in jail. Like, I mean, that, and I was in jail for 30 days, had to detox off methadone. It's just the places that these things will take you to um, are incredible. And it's like Ray said, I mean, we could probably talk about all the terrible things and the depths that we've went for. I mean, if we days and days and days, because we used for so long together and we did so many things together. It was just like routine. I would wake up, call Ray, he'd pick me up. We'd either have money, we figured out how to get money, and it was just day after day after day after day. In whenever we parted ways, it was just mine just got worse, and um, I continued to use more and more and more and more, and same with the benzodiazepines. And I've had seizures from coming off them, still continuing to take them. Um, like I said, sleeping in abandoned crack houses on the streets. I'm 6 foot, so my normal body weight is about 180 to 200. I weighed 137 pounds. I would eat like once every 3 days. Um, and it was just like, I wanted to die. It was like, I just couldn't. Mainly because I probably would have tried to intentionally overdose, but like being homeless, it's hard enough. It was barely sustainable to even get enough just to get well for the day. So to be able to obtain the things to just like do enough to end it all, never never crossed my mind. I did have moments of like wanting to die, and I was like, this is like worse than death. I wouldn't wish this on anyone because it's just terrible the places it'll take you. Um, and I'm jumping around from back and forth from whenever Ray and I started to other ends of the spectrum. But whenever we used together, uh, we 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 did a lot of which I don't want to glamorize anything. We did a lot of really bad things, and like I said, we did things that, like I said, I'm still surprised that we're alive. Like the things we did on the weekends with our prescriptions, um, like we would each get a prescription of Klonopin a month, and we would just dump them out on the table and just lock Ray's. We'd get one DiGiorno pizza, lock Ray's door, and then not not come out until 3 days later, and they were all gone. Um, and continue to use heroin. I mean, it's ultimately the same thing. It's just continued heroin use, continued benzo use, and um, overdosing, and just there's just no matter what happens, it seems like when you're in that mindset, it's just like you just can't stop. And there are people that don't understand that. It's just like, why don't you just stop? And it's like saying that to someone. It's like, well, it's to me, it's like don't breathe. It's like the same thing. It's like it just your mind isn't programmed that way after you use drugs that long, after you put stuff into your system that long. I know that there are, as I said, as Ray said, the way he found his recovery is a lot different than mine, and my philosophy and the way I always thought was, the goal is to get clean. The goal is to get to the top of the hill, get to the top of the mountain, get to the part of where you're content with yourself and you're happy with yourself and you are living a good life. There's more than one path to the top of the mountain. Some less known, some more known. 12 step, I believe, is the most common from my knowledge. But my opinion is that as long as you get there, as long as you get to the top, I don't care if someone wants to believe in whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Something, nothing, themselves, anything. As long as you get there, people find different ways. There's different ways to doing that. Unfortunately, it took me lots of tries. A lot of them weren't serious. I mean, I would plot my using at these places. I remember being at these places like whenever I would get my phone calls, instead of calling my family, I would call Ray and say 27 more days, be ready. And then the money my parents would send me for like food and just essentials at these places, all I would do was just save it and wait and wait and wait and wait and never took it seriously. And whenever I would get out, Ray would be the first person I'd call, and I'd be like, "Call him and let's go." And it was just like um, never any lengths of sobriety at all from when I started using heroin until I got to where the place, my 27th rehab, to which landed me at, I had 9 years clean, had a, and then I relapsed, and then went on a shorter run for about a year or so, which was really bad because fentanyl was out now, and I was overdosing multiple times, and it was just getting really bad. A lot of deaths of friends that I associated myself with. Unfortunately, I was never in any legal trouble really. I came very, very close to it, but I'm still surprised that I never got arrested for some of the things I've done. I've even had people in the rehabs like, "How have you never gotten caught or doing anything like that?" And it just never happened. I was never able to. And I still think even, I mean, because the worst of the worst happened, and I still continued to do it. It's like as low as I was, it was like my mindset was just like, okay, how do I get out of this and do more? Every rehab I went to, it was like, well, this is just like going to lower my tolerance and I won't have to do as much. Or my tolerance will drop and then I can only take one or two Xanax or Klonopin instead of 20 or 30. That's all I looked at it as. And then towards the end of the 27 rehabs, I did give it a serious, I was like, okay, I'm like, waiting for myself to want to stop, but that's not happening. But I wanted to want to stop, if that makes sense. Like I didn't want to stop, but I wished I wanted to stop, which I'm pretty sure if you're an addict, you can understand what I mean by that. And I really tried to like follow the 12 steps and get a sponsor and try to have someone work me through it. But it's just like that barrier with the higher power was always there. I was like, I'm not going to pray. Like, I don't like that's not me. And he told me that well, you need to find this or you will fail, which I'm not, I haven't been to AA or NA recently, but I'm pretty sure that that's not a typical thing someone should or would say that um, to someone. I felt he should have been a little more encouraging to, because I felt like whenever when I would go to some of these AA meetings, the older people would be like, well, you need to find God or a higher power. And I was like, I can't even find my cigarettes, let alone like myself or anything like that. So how the hell am I supposed to find, like, it's just like so far beyond like my mental concept of like finding this higher power. I was like, I'm so lost. Like, I don't even like want to like move. So that was so foreign to me. And it just, it just, it stopped. And then I found the place I work at now, which, we'll get into here in a minute. I believe my 15 minutes is up, so I'm going to turn it back over to Ray.
All right, thanks, Danny. Thanks for sharing all that.
Is there anything,
Yeah,
Ray, real quick, is there anything else that you wanted me to share specifically that I left out?
well, I would like to talk about. We're going to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about how we got clean, which we both kind of touched on. But there's one thing in particular I would like to bring up and then hear your perspective on it. But I remember my first ever recovery meeting when I was, I believe, 18 years old, and I was so depressed. I wanted to kill myself, and like I did, but I didn't want to, but I did. And I remember being with Danny, and I think one of us brought up the idea. I think it was him. Like maybe we should try like go to a meeting. Like it can't hurt, you know. And I had never been to something like that before, and I thought, okay, so there was a hospital close to where we grew up that they had these AA meetings at and NA, but this particular meeting was an AA meeting, and I remember we went there together. and everybody's going around the room and introducing themselves and like sharing. And when it came to me, I said, I know this is an AA meeting, but my name's Ray and I'm an addict. And I think like the guy, Dan probably has a better memory, like kind of like slapped his hand down on the
Mm-hmm.
table or something, and like got real upset and like, well, kind of like we're above you, you know, like we don't want to hear
Mm-hmm.
from you. Hold your comments to yourself. And mind you, they didn't know I was literally on the brink of wanting to go commit suicide, and
Yep.
that like affected me very deeply. And I thought, man, I thought this was like a place for help. And Dan had some choice words. Maybe you could fill in the blanks about like your perspective of that.
Well, I remember it was after a long binge of ecstasy, and you were already having a rough time, obviously due to the drug use. And I mean, I was even like, I mean, all I know is this, they say that these meetings help us, so let's give it a shot. Let's just, I mean, so we looked one up and we went, and I just remember you were like, that was like one of the most depressed times I've ever seen you, because like we've used a lot and I've seen you like barely talking, just like, so I found a meeting, we went to a meeting, and it was AA, which I didn't think it really mattered. It's like, I mean, a drug is a drug, and I mean,
Mm,
we're coming here for asking for help. So we're sitting in this place, and Ray finally has the courage to start talking about his feelings, because I mean, that's how you get better. You have to like let things out. So he starts talking, and the guy cuts him off and said, "Excuse me, but we don't want to hear about that. This is AA. This is alcohol. We don't do this. Isn't for drugs." And then the other guy said next to him said something similar along those lines, like, "Yeah, maybe that this isn't the place for you." And I looked at Ray, and it looked like someone just like shot him in the chest, because it was just like that little sliver of hope that he had just like vanished.
crushed.
And I told them, which I'm not going to say exactly what I said to them, but in a ruder way, I said, this is why people um, don't like this is why people get turned off by this. Because people come here for help, and just because you have 24 years clean and are um, older than us and have just only drank alcohol, alcohol I think is worse on the body than a lot of other drugs. So I said some things to them, and we got up and left, because I was like, we're not going to just sit here and subject ourselves to these people like degrading us because we don't drink and we do drugs instead. And that was a very negative point for Ray, because that was the one time that he had reached out for help.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't really remember too much of what happened after that. Obviously, I didn't kill myself, but it was just very low for me. And so I could have very easily let that one experience keep me from recovery in general, or ever going to another meeting or ever trying it. And I had some other experiences too in NA that were very similar. Like people talking about me and saying, "Stay away from him. He's no good. He gets high." And I'm like thinking, like I'm at an NA meeting, man, and these people are like saying this stuff. But I didn't let that. I did let it stop me for a while, but not permanently. And so one of the things I've learned is like from that experience, I took a lot from that and thought, you never know where somebody's at when they first come into your group or your room. You don't know where they're at, and so you want to like be welcoming to everyone and treat them like human beings, because they're still human beings, and we all have problems of some sort. Ours just happen to be addiction to drugs, but I really learned from that. And I even had the chance to speak at a couple AA meetings and address that stigma. And I actually changed some of the old timers' minds about it. They even shared, like, we thought when you started talking this was going to be like horrible, but you actually like really taught us something, and we got a lot out of it. So when I get the chance to talk about that, I do, because I think, I mean, alcohol is a drug, and there's this like people think it's somehow like better or different, and it's like the same problems and the same solutions to those problems for heroin or alcohol or cocaine or whatever it is. And so I carried that with me, and I apply it every single time we have a meeting or a group. I make sure to remember that, you know, and remember where I was, like on the verge. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a really important one to bring up, and I would say we're just going to take a few minutes and talk about, you know, like how we got clean. Dan will talk about where he went and how he did it. But like I said earlier in sharing some of my story, I had went to several rehabs, but I was very much like Dan. Like I just was like plotting how I was going to get high as soon as I got out. And the last time I went, I was just so broken. I remember my mom was actually driving me to a place where this rehab was going to come and pick me up. They sent a driver, and she had asked me on the way, like, what's going to be different this time, Raymond? And you know, for the first time in my entire life, 'cause I said a lot of words, I made a lot of promises that held no weight anymore. My word meant absolutely nothing to anybody because all I did was lie and manipulate. And I said to her, and I think this was like a really good sign. I said, you know, Mom, I have no words. I said, it's just going to have to be my actions. And that's literally all I have to say. And she was like, wow. I think she had like a spark of hope from that. And so, yeah, I went and I just, as much as I didn't want to, I did what they told me to do, even though I didn't trust anybody. I certainly didn't trust them. Because, you know, living that street life, your life depends on not trusting people. And I just kept going, and the alternative was go back to the streets and be homeless, or like keep going in this program and try it out. And actually, I went to Pyramid in Wilkinsburg, Pennsylvania, and it was like my second Pyramid rehab I've been in. And 19 days in, after I detoxed and I was on the floor with like the actual people in the rehab and the groups, it was like first thing in the morning, and they told me I'd lost funding and that they had to send me home. I had 19 days in, and I said, no, I can't go home. I said, I can't, I'm not ready to do that. And they were just like, we're sorry, we can't keep you. We don't have funding. And make a long story short, they sent me home. And so I'm freaking out, and I'm like, I need money. I don't have food. I don't have anything. And so I start setting up drug deals to start doing what I knew how to do. And, later that afternoon, they had called me back and said they found funding, but I just had to be there by 11. So I set up my drug deal. I got high, and I made it back there like right at 11. And they took me back in, and I completed the program successfully. And then they said, you know, you need to go to a halfway house, and I didn't want to do that, but like I just did it. And during that time, I had like 2 days at the halfway house and in a place I didn't know, out in the middle of nowhere. And my dad had died, and that was very difficult. I had like 3 months clean, and then 2 weeks after that, my brother had died from Lyme's disease. My dad was like old age, really, and my brother was Lyme's disease. And so I was so crushed because I'm just come after all those years of using, I was just starting to feel, and I didn't know what that was. So I remember like having to sit down and write and like study the definitions of feelings, and then circle the ones I thought applied to me the best, and then work through those with a counselor, and then find out coping mechanisms for each individual feeling. Because after like not feeling for almost 20 years, my emotional system was completely like non-existent. Because drugs was how I dealt with emotion, happy, sad, or indifferent, you know. And so for me, it was a long and arduous journey, but I knew I was so sick of living the way I was. And after trying to kill myself and like seemingly being unsuccessful at that, I just thought, man, like I don't have anywhere else to turn. I don't have anything else to do. I've tried everything I know. And so I just listened to them, and I did really good in that program. And it was a very, very challenging halfway house, and there was countless guys that got kicked out of there every single day. So that wasn't very like faith inspiring to have like all these people being kicked out for like the littlest things they were doing. But I get now why they did that. It was like, if you can't follow little rules in here, how are you going to follow big rules out in the real world? And so I graduated that, and then I went to a 3/4 house for a year. And it was really good for me to be in those environments. I mean, if you think about it, if you walk 14 miles into the woods and you just kind of stop 14 miles in, you're like looking around lost, and you're like, okay, I better go back to the road I started on. So you got to turn around and walk 14 miles back to get to the road you started on, and that's what it was like for me. So having almost 20 years of active addiction, I personally, I needed that time. I had about like 2 years roughly in recovery environments that I was accountable, and had other people around me that were working towards the same goal, that were holding me accountable. And I was in the 12-step programs for years, and they helped me. They really helped me. So that was like my method, and then later on I started my own group, and it's a little different, but yeah, that was like just, I don't know, guys, I just didn't have anywhere else to go, and it was like, go back to the streets and do what you were doing. Use the excuse that your dad died to leave and go get high. Use the excuse that your brother died. I had every reason in the world to go back to the way I was living. Like, if I needed a reason, I was given plenty of them. And I just didn't, because I just thought, like, there's got to be a better way. Like, maybe there's a better way. Just maybe. And as I started to learn, I could clearly see, as the fog was starting to lift, the path was just being laid out before me. All I had to do was just walk it and trust and have faith. And, I started to feel better. I started to kind of feel like a human again. And yeah, I mean, and I've even been homeless clean. Like, I had 4.5 years clean, and found myself in a bad spot, man. I was homeless again. And then I got through that. And I said, as long as I don't pick up the first one, it absolutely 100% must get better. Like, it has to get better as long as I don't go back and pick up. And it did. Things got a whole lot better. But that's kind of like some of the story of how I got clean, and the turning point. Because this is a question I get asked a lot, and then I'd like to hear from you, Dan. But the turning point for me was just this: the capsule of my being could not contain the agony, the horrors, and the tragedies of everyday life any longer. And like I said, I tried to kill myself. It didn't work. Like, I just felt like such a loser and scum of the earth. I just couldn't anymore. I don't know how else to say it. I just couldn't. And there in NA, there's a thing they say, like, we couldn't live with or without drugs. And I thought, like, what does that even mean? I can't live with them. I can't live without them. Like, so how on earth am I going to live? What a conundrum, And the answer was, you have to find a completely new way of life. So all the old associations had to go. The old people, places, and things, it all had to go. And then once I got stuff out of the way, I found out it wasn't the drugs. I always thought if I could just put down the drugs, everything would be fine. And that wasn't the case. It was me. It was like my insides. And I remember being in rehab, and one of the techs, the guys there, said, don't worry, it's okay. Don't get worked up. The only thing you got to change is everything. And it wasn't very comforting, but he was being real with me. And so it started this process of me changing every little thing about myself I possibly could. And I mean, I'm still working on it. It never stops. And in fact, if I do stop, I will start to revert and go back. And just like Dan said, I mean, you said 9 years clean, and you have one drink, and the next day you're going and getting what you really want. I mean, it's like it clicks something in your mind, in your brain. But yeah, that's about it, man, for me. But Dan, so how about you, and how you got clean?
Yeah, I'm gonna share that. I just shot you a text about the time thing too, Ray.
Oh,
If
sorry.
no, that's okay. No, um, my I was homeless on the streets, and I had completely given up. Like, I was just waiting for an overdose or something to happen, or myself to it was just like, I mean, I was picking up needles and shit. I mean, I was like, this isn't gonna last much longer. Somebody from AA did pick me up off the streets, called my parents, and said, if you don't do something like the tough love thing, some people that works for, it's not for him. Like he's gonna die. So this guy said, you can stay with me. I talked to your mother, and she is going to. She said, give her 2 days, and she's going to find something. He said, the only thing is you can't use here. I said, well, then just drop me back off down on the streets, because that's not realistic with what I'm using. I was like, I've been homeless for almost a year. I can withstand 2 more days. I was like, just meet me somewhere in 2 days. So he picked me up 2 days later, and she found a place called Narconon. And the adventure getting there was like a whole different. Like I when it was even hard for me to get there, because like I tried to like take everything I had at once. I took a whole bunch of Klonopins, and the plane had to get emergency landed because I thought I overdosed. I ended up with nerve damage in my legs because of it. It was just a whole other story. But the place I got to, what intrigued me about it was they said that religion was not incorporated. If you are religious, that's fine. You can, if you want it to use it to your advantage, then you can. If you don't have it, that's great. So I was a little more interested in it. They're like, we do things that will help you regardless of it. As you go along, your mindset will change. Because I could go to places for 6 months, and I was still like, the first thing I would wake up, I would like be fidgety and anxious and just like physically not feeling the best. So I found a place that was Narconon, Louisiana. And when I got there, I went through the detox. Was just a pretty standard detox, except it's more you get detox meds to keep you comfortable, but they use more of like vitamins and holistic approach instead of like completely over medicating you with other medications. Um, and then after that, I went into what is called a sauna detox, which it was 30 days, and it was a program where you take niacin, vitamins, different supplements, different minerals. You do some exercising, and you get in and out of the sauna over the course of a few hours a day. And the niacin will start to flush your system. I'm sure people have heard the term that niacin will help you pass a drug test. That's because it flushes drugs out of your system. So over the course of 30 days, I did the sauna detox. And after that, I remember when it finished, I remember feeling like I was like, my mindset did start to change a little. I was like, I'm not thinking about this as much anymore. Like something is like, I don't physically feel so terrible that it's like constantly on my mind, like the first thing I think of in the morning and the last thing I think of at night. But that was the first part, because the place I work at, it was like you have to like physically get yourself well before you can deal with the mental part of it. And after that, there's a part of the program that uses it's more of like a cognitive therapy, and that's kind of like, as Ray said earlier, the drugs really aren't the problem. They're more of a solution to the problem that is underlying. I mean, they also become a problem in and of themselves, but the cognitive therapy helps you understand your mind more and helps you to make it to where you can make more rational decisions, like those knee-jerk reactive decisions that you um, make. It helps you understand yourself better. It helps you learn why you do things the way you do. It helps you learn to like pause and make certain like decisions correctly and be more rational, be more in the moment, and not like past, future, thinking all over the place. Just like focusing on where you are now, being in the present moment, and being able to be logical. So that part of the program, I mean, I could spend hours going over all that, but I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to eat up all the time. But when I finished that part, I just remember it was like even getting. I remember waking up one morning, and I was went through half the day, and I even got chills because I was like, I haven't even thought of heroin once. Like something is working. This is like me. This is like making me feel better, like mentally, physically. Like my mind isn't like a carnival anymore. It's not like a circus in my head. It's like it's calming down. It's quieting down. It's not so intense anymore. So it was like the idea of living sober was not so. It didn't seem so far fetched anymore. And that was about halfway through the program. And I was like, because when I got there, I initially didn't even really want to go. I was like, I'm just going to figure out where I can maneuver my way back to Pittsburgh. And then after the sauna, I was like, this is actually kind of working. I didn't really think it was going to. It's like, because regardless of your mindset, when you go through the sauna, it's like you're going to physically feel better at the end of it when you're done with it, no matter what. Um, so then after I did the second part of the program, the cognitive therapy, and learning on why I did the things I did, and coming to understand myself more, and learning about myself as a person, that is the changing point. When that first time I finally was like, maybe I should stop. Maybe this is like possible. It seems possible because I've been here the whole time and nothing about like a higher power has been brought up, and I'm feeling better. So I started to like a little sliver of hope started to come back. And then when I got to the last part is to where you just address you like in that middle cognitive part, you learn about why you do things the way you do and how you created the things and situations in your life, and you learn about all of them. And then in the final step, it's more, to sum it up, it's like a counseling thing where you work one-on-one with someone and go over all of the underlying issues that caused you to see why you reacted the way that you did. Because once you um, have come that far along and are clear-headed after the previous two things, it's much easier to digest that. Because if you go to some of the 28-day programs I go to, they'd be like, okay, lay everything out in front of you, and it's too overwhelming. Um, Here, where the place I worked at, it was like, no, we're just going to focus on the physical. Let's just get you physically best. We're going to detox you. Then you're going to do the full sauna detox. And then after that, just go from there. Because I tried to leave so many times in the beginning. And then after the sauna detox, I was like, I started to believe them. I was like, okay, maybe it's going to be okay. And then after I finish the final part of it, which is where you go and underlie you like find different solutions to handle the problems other than drugs, things that are more optimal and pro survival. It's not like, well, I'm depressed, so I'm going to take a antidepressant. I myself don't even, I don't like, I would like even antidepressants. Like if anyone takes that, I'm not belittling people who do that, but I myself don't think that for myself anyway, is a smart thing to do because it's just using something else to solve a problem. So you learn different strategies, and it's different for everyone. Like our program is very like flexible, like not like, well, um, it has to be this. It's like there's different like bands in which it's like this person, maybe this is right for you. This is right for you. We have different counseling and different capacity and different things that teach us how to handle these underlying issues because everyone has different underlying issues. And whenever I finished that part of the program, it was, it was very, very like overwhelming because I actually didn't want to go home and do drugs. It was the first time after decades of using, after decades of terror, and decades of every rehab I went to wanting to come out and use drugs. I didn't want to anymore. So I went home for a while, got a job, and worked for a while and stayed clean. It wasn't, they wanted me to stay there and they wanted to get me trained because they liked me and they said, I would help people before me. I was like, listen, I was like the worst of the worst. Don't give up. And I would encourage people. So they were interested in me working there. So after a while, I decided to go back, and they sent me off to do training and all the necessary schooling and all that I needed to do to stay there and work, which is where I work now. I worked there for a long time, on and off over the last 15 years. And as Ray said, I had a slip up after 9 years, and like I said, you can like snap of a finger, it's all back to how it used to be. And after that slip up, I went back to the place that I initially went to, and I got cleaned up. And I went back home for a little bit, and then I went back and I continued to work there to this day, because I like to be an example that because I know over the years I was always told that there's only one way. There's only one way. and it didn't jive with me. And I'm very happy that for the people that it works for, I'm very happy that. I'm very happy for Ray. Ray is like a completely different person than when I knew him, and it changed him to like a much better person. So I commend him and everyone else that do that. It's just for me personally, I still have the same belief system. I'm still the same person. I just handle my problems differently, learn to use different solutions to handle problems, and I do not. I still have this. Like I said, I'm still an atheist. I still um, have that belief, but it is possible to attain that without that, in my opinion. Because, like I said, I've helped people over the last 15 years that are still clean to this day that I talk to, I stay in touch with, and I um, usually people end up at our program after they've been to a lot of the other ones and they've failed a lot because our program, like I said, 12 step is the most common practice of recovery. As I mean, most people know that, but whenever people get to us, it's usually after someone in their family or someone in their life has found our program, and it's like something different. And it's usually people that get here or people that um, have been around, like, and it has, like me, for example, they've tried, they can't do the higher power thing, it just doesn't jive with them. So I'm here. I wanted to specifically, the whole point of this was like, Ray and I are both clean. We're both helping people. We're both sober, two completely, totally different ways.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so it was just it's very unique. It's very interesting because, like I said, Ray and I have two completely, like I said, Ray's like a lifelong friend, still consider him one of my best friends. We have two completely different viewpoints, two completely different methods of recovery, two completely different set of belief systems, and we're both clean. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how you get there. I'm here personally to tell people that were like me, that you don't have to, like, if you don't have that capacity to like have the higher power thing, there are other ways, and you can do it other ways. If people, and again, after this, or if anyone ever sees this and has any questions for me, you can all. I'm down to talk to anyone, anytime, day or night. If they have any questions for me, you can ask Ray. Uh, if if anyone has any questions for me. But I'm here to say that there is, if you're an atheist like me and was very, very hopeless, never give up. Do not give up hope, because there's always hope. That's what worked for me. I've seen it work for a lot of people. I stay in touch with a lot of our, part of my job also is staying in touch with people who complete our program, and the majority of them stay clean. But despite like not going to the meetings, the point is to, you still have to stay connected to something positive. Like, even though it's not AA, there are some parallels to it. For instance, like Ray said, you have to completely eliminate people, places, and things. Like, that is like if I were to go home tomorrow and start hanging out with all my using buddies, I mean, that's risky. That's still risky. Like, so there are some parallels to it. You have to just change everything. You still have to stay connected to some sort of supportive group of people who um, support you and are good for you and healthy, and still stay connected to something positive. You can't just go home and just do nothing. You have to get a job, stay productive, be part of something, stay in touch with people. Like, we have a group of people here that stay in touch with people constantly and stay connected with them and keep tabs on them, and make sure they're doing well. So that was my method. That's how I got clean. It worked well for me. I'm clean. It's been 5 years or so since that slip up, and I work every day to help people. And I guess that's the end of my part, Ray. Unless you had any other questions for me, or wanted me to go over anything else.
Well, no, man, I appreciate that. I wanted to open it up to people. Either I know there's a few people watching right now. There's been a lot of people in and out. If you have any questions, whether you're here in StreamYard or if you're on Facebook, all you gotta do is just post a comment on underneath this video. If you have like a question or a comment. We just wanted to allow some time for that. And if nobody does, we were just going to talk more about the solutions and like things that we do daily. So I'll allow a few seconds here if anybody has a comment or question. Now would be the time to bring it up.
And even like
So
I said, if someone sees this later and has any questions for me personally about more about like, because like I said, we could each of us could go on and on and on about like different things. But if anyone sees this that was like me and has questions, please feel free to message me. My name is on the screen. If you don't know how to get a hold of me, you can ask Ray, and Ray will help with that. But if anyone, just don't give up hope. And if you are like me, there are alternatives.
yeah, for sure. So it doesn't look like anyone is bringing up any questions or comments right at this time. Let me see here. Yeah, I don't see anything yet. But if so, if someone's watching this and you got something, by all means, we're gonna stay on for a few more minutes. But Dave Patterson says, "Nice to see both of you clean and doing well with your lives. I don't see too many people from my past doing the same things I do." Thanks, Dave. I mean, we've known Dave for a
Quite a
while
while.
back when we were,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's it's awesome that you are as well, man. Really is. I don't know too many people either, to be honest with you. I mean, most of them have probably died, or there's a couple who have made it, I think. But yeah, it's really nice. I'll just touch on a couple things like that I do to keep myself clean and accountable, because accountability is such a huge part. So one of the big things for me, and this is in not particularly in order of like highest priority to lowest, but they're all kind of a top priority. But I work out, and the gym is like a big part of my recovery personally. It helps me in a lot of different ways. It helps my focus, my mindset, my self confidence, my discipline. And for me, overcoming resistance of weights in the gym, I can directly apply that to my life and overcoming resistances in life. So it teaches me a lot of lessons. It gives me an outlet. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I went to the gym and took out my anxiety and my anger on the weights in a positive way. And I think that's another really leads into a great point is as addicts, we actually have some really great assets if we can flip it. So, like that same determination to get the drug no matter what, if we could just flip that into a positive and apply it in our lives, I mean, the things we can achieve are, I mean, the sky, I mean, it's endless, And so I stay connected. I started support groups because it keeps me accountable. So if I ever, we all have bad days still. We're not like perfect. We still have bad times and maybe thoughts, fleeting thoughts of, doing something here and there for myself at least. But I keep myself accountable. So like I have a support group I have to run because other people uh, are where I was or somewhere in between, and they need help, and I am responsible for running these groups. So like I put these things in place in my life to keep myself accountable. If I didn't have anything like that, I'm not saying I would go back, but I don't know. I'm like I'm not immune to going and using again. I mean, it's very easy to do. But I just prefer my life so much more today that it doesn't make sense for me to go back out and do that again. Not saying I never will, but I don't plan on it. It's not in my plans. It's not an option in my mind. But it is easy to slip up. So that's why the accountability. And I study myself. I read the Bible. I'm a very spiritual person. I follow Christ. Those things for me really help. Like, having a belief foundation has been very vital for me in my recovery. So honestly, just like keeping an eye on myself, keeping myself in check, And the other thing is like when someone tells me something about myself that maybe is off, or that maybe I hurt somebody, or I said something I shouldn't have said, instead of me just kind of dismissing that, I'm a whole lot quicker to address it, because I actually know how to address it today. But back then, I didn't. People would tell me all these things, and I was hurting people. And as much as I wanted to change, I hadn't the slightest clue where to even start to change it. So, taking a daily inventory, which is part of the 12-step process, just like, where am I at? What did I do? If I made a mistake, or hurt somebody, or did something I shouldn't have, how can I like prevent that from happening again? And so it's like taking this inventory, helping others, keeping myself accountable, remembering that like the drug is more powerful than me, like I'm not over it, it's over me, and so I can't, I just can't, I can't I know it's gonna win. Like I can't even dabble in it. Like that's like playing with grenades with the pins out and just wondering when it's going to explode. It's like juggling grenades for me. So I know that because I've had to learn by being knocked down so many times. But so it's like humility is a big part. No, like surrendering, that's a huge part. That's part of the 12-step process, is surrendering. And I've always said addiction is one of the only wars I know that you can surrender and win. And when you really think about that, it's very powerful. The other thing is sometimes I just take it moment by moment, and one of the cliches in traditional recovery is just for today. And that took me 5 years to understand what that even meant. I didn't get it. And it means like, just stay clean for today. Like, don't worry about, like Dan said, don't worry about the future, forget about the past. Like, just get through today, and then tomorrow wake up and do the same thing. Just get through today, because the thought of like never using again, especially early on, can be so overwhelming that it seems hopeless, So just get through the day. Just focus on what's right in front of you. Being in that present moment, like Danny said, is super important. So those are some of the things that I do, consistently, to help me stay, clean and sober and be a productive member of society, So I'd like to hear from you, Dan, if you have anything to add or different things you do.
I would a lot of the I agree with a lot of the things that you just said about you have to stay productive. You have to The one thing that you can't do, that you cannot do, is just like if you go to rehab or you like get off the drugs, you can't just do nothing. That will not work.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what you believe in. You have to put some forth effort in being responsible for yourself and making rational decisions. One of the hard things for me was I started at such a young age, that like 12, and I remember going into rehab with like people that were like much older than me, and they're like, "Well, once I'm done with this, I'm just going to go back to this whenever things were good in my life." And they're like, "Well, what are your interests and hobbies?" I'm like, "I have no idea. I started using it like 12. I never like the last thing I did before when I was playing with toys. I was a kid, so I never really had like anything to go back to because I never had a chance because I started so young." So the thing that I think is very important is to always, like, you can't do it alone. You have to be connected in some form of fashion. My way is to stay here and help other people and keep me connected and keep me involved in and just seeing the condition that people come in here. It's always a reminder. I mean, I can think of the withdrawal symptoms instant, like I can pull up in my head right now and remember exactly what it feels like. It's just I see it every day. But even other than that, it's like I had to find things that were interested. I personally am interested in art and tattoos. That is a hobby of mine. It's something that I enjoy doing, something I plan, something I create. It's always about creating things for yourself, making things for yourself, setting goals for yourself, um, and finding an outlet. You have to surround yourself with people that are going to lift you up and not tear you down. And it's always important to be connected to something, um, whether that's a group of friends that aren't afraid to call you out on things and lift you up, that you can call whenever you're having struggles, um, and finding outlets and things that you like to do. like I myself, like I said, I like my job a lot. I work a lot, um, 6 days a week, so I don't have too much free time to myself, and that's by choice. But I like to hang out with friends in my free time. I like video games still. I like to like I said, I'm interested in art, tattoos. I plan things out like that. Um, and I just stay connected to the people that I work with, to other people that are just going through the same thing, because it's like we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. Just we have to just find how to get, as I said earlier, to the top of the metaphorical mountain. It doesn't matter which way you get there. I think as long as by the time you get there, you're a clean, productive, responsible person that's doing the right thing, then I think that's all that really matters. Because it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there, and find a method that will keep you there. Because if you work up to like, okay, I got the drugs out of my system, I did rehab, I got a job, and now I'm clean, you still have to like be somewhat involved with like being connected to uh, people that are doing well. Because, like I said, like Ray said, no one's immune. Like I was clean for 9 years and surrounded myself with people, and then it was just like one drink. I mean, my mindset, I was like, it's been 9 years. I mean, what? It's not going to kill me. And then the next day, about 3 bundles of dope. It's like, I mean, you can't put yourself in a situation. You have to be rational, logical, think things out, play the tape through. I believe they even say that in AA. Play it all the way through. Listen to what's going to happen next. Like I said, even though our beliefs are completely different, there are some parallels to the sayings and the things that are said, because they're just factual. It's proven. It's like you have to do certain X, Y, and Z to get to this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bring up a really good point about finding things you're actually interested in. I was very much like you, like started at 12 and
Yeah,
didn't. I played guitar. Like that was one thing actually that I carried with me through my whole addiction and still to this day. And that's such a positive outlet of expression of emotions that I didn't know how to express otherwise. And so, yeah, finding things that you're actually interested, having a goal, actually writing your goal out, thinking about it, and not just thinking about it, but like really think through what your goal. Like you're going to trade your life for this thing, so it's got to be something that's worthy of you. A lot of times, I think we wonder if we're worthy for a big goal instead of wondering if the big goal is worthy of us. And all those kind of mindset shifts for me came over time, but have that goal written out, and specifically I carry it on a note card in my pocket. And it's called auto suggestion. So every time I reach my hand in my pocket, I feel that card. It sends a light signal whizzing through my body, hits cells of recognition in my brain, and triggers the image of that goal in my mind. And the more often that happens, I start to align myself and get in harmony with that goal. And it's like, man, I got to take action on that. like this goal wasn't for nothing, and so totally shifting focus from what it used to be to where I'm going instead of where I was. It's about and even where you're at. It's like, okay, you're just where you're at. That's okay. But where are you going? That's what we need to focus on. Where do you want to be? And so changing the focus, having a support, and Ray's Recovery this is why I started it. It's so people can have that support community and offer various methods of recovery. I don't believe there's one size that fits all. I really don't. I've seen too many different people's experiences for that to say that is 100% true, that it's just one path. And I know plenty of AA and NA people who would burn me at the stake, for even saying that, like, this is the way and this is it. But like, that's just hasn't been my personal experience. And I think we need a lot more than just one thing to get us to this point where we can successfully live the rest of our lives, however long that is, being clean and sober, serene, happy, joyous, and free. So yeah, I mean, it's all super important stuff that I've learned along the way. And we have a podcast as well, a Raised Recovery podcast. It's on YouTube. I'll post them in the group too. But me and Danny are actually going to do a podcast at some point in the next, I don't know, month or so, whenever we can find the time to get together. But That'll be something we'll also post in the group. But yeah, we're about at time. So I don't know, Dan, did you have any other things you'd like to add, or closing statements or points you wanted to bring up?
My personal closing statements would say one, like I said, never don't give up hope. Don't give up hope because after 27 rehabs, I was hopeless, and I would just say never give up hope. And if anyone, like I said before, if anyone sees this and has any more questions for me personally, because the way I did it was like a lot different than what Ray said, then please feel free to message me, ask me questions. And like Ray said, there as he said, a lot of people. I've met a lot of people that would burn him at the stake for saying there's more than one method. But I'm living proof that there is more than um, just one method. And I know plenty of other people who have used other methods, the same one I have, and have been clean for the same, if not longer than me. So my closing thoughts are: do not give up hope. And if anyone has any questions for me, even if you don't know me, you can private message me. You can ask Ray to ask me, whatever. Those are my closing words.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you being here, and I'm gonna say a couple closing words, and then we'll hop off. But yeah, I highly agree. Part of like Ray's recovery's kind of like promise is that no matter how bad you are or think you are or were, no matter how low you are, it or what your beliefs are, what your sexual preferences, anything, creed, religion, lack of religion, no matter who you are or where you're at, if you're alive right now, there is hope, and we hope to be a beacon of light to people that are still out there where we were years ago, like begging and praying for death. So, and the same goes for me. The Raise Recovery group is always open. We have group chats in there. You can also feel free to reach out to me. And this also goes, something we haven't really talked about during this session, but that goes for families and loved ones of people who are addicted too, because we recognize that they need support a lot, just as much maybe as the addicted too. So I talk to a lot of like moms and just different people that have family that's addicted. And my biggest thing with that is trying to get them to understand not to be an enabler, because a lot of family tends to enable in a lot of
Absolutely.
examples. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, again, I'm very happy to talk to people. It's what I do. It's part of my life's mission. And, yeah, you can contact us whenever. So,
Yeah, and like Ray said, we will probably do a podcast soon because that would be because, like I said, with Ray and I's history and like where we're at now, we could probably like talk for the next 8 hours and
yeah. Oh,
just.
yeah.
But we can do and we'll do a podcast at some point probably and just like because I think it's good to hear it from like two completely polar opposite ends.
Yep, for sure. For sure. It gives people like more hope, it reaches a wider audience of opportunity to recover. So, and I think that's kind of, if anything, that's is like, you don't, there's not like one set path that, and that's it. You can get this. It's actually possible, and we're literally living proof in the flesh. Like I could pinch myself. I'm real. I think so. We're living proof that it's possible. And I mean, we really shouldn't. I don't know if shouldn't is the right word, but it's miraculous that we're both still here, and we should have been dead many times. So, and we're not, and so the same can be for you. So yeah, I appreciate everybody that has watched, even if you just watch for a little bit. Please feel free to leave comments under this video, and we'll get back to you and address them. If you have any further questions or need help, reach out to us. And we're just very grateful for the opportunity to be able to broadcast this out there to the world. So thanks, Dan, for your time too.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm gonna end the broadcast. See you guys.